All is well with the recorder.
It's going.
There's too many buttons on here that you have to worry about.
I know.
I just want one big button.
Yeah.
It says go.
Record.
Because you're so afraid that you're going to record something, and then it's going to be this great podcast, and you're going to look down, and it's not recording.
Well, we haven't had that issue.
We haven't yet. Way to go. You shouldn't have said that.
Don't jinx us. Now the SD
wood.
card's going to be corrupt or something stupid. But
all right, Dave, kick us off.
All right, junkies. It has been a few minutes since we talked to you last time. We had a great conversation with Lydia Smith this last round, and we just want to kind of follow up with that and talk about some of the hunting aspects of elk, and specifically in the rut season. And Lance went through some of his experiences, and we're going to talk about that today and see what we can do to help you along the path of recognizing some of the signs of the rut and what we can expect to see.
Yeah, I just from this past experience in the fall, I drew out for a limited entry archery elk hunt. And we drew out for an area here in Utah. Normally we're like mid-August to mid-September.
And everybody complains about it.
Everyone complains about it. You don't really get to be right in the middle of the rut, the peak part of the rut. And so for this unit, though, for the first time ever that I know of, we were actually able to hunt from September 1st to September 30th. Yeah. So we were excited, thinking, all right, we're going to be right in the middle of the rut, right in the peak rut. Everyone told us, so this area just, kind of be ready, but it's going to happen more towards the end of September rather than more in the middle.
Right.
And, from my experience hunting down there, I started to see what looked like to me the rut was in full swing about, I would say, mid-September.
Right.
And we had a lot of people, a lot of hunting parties down there we talked to often, and they were like, oh, no, just wait. It hasn't hit quite yet. But I was seeing so many signs of the rut was in full swing myself. Mm-hmm. And maybe other people hadn't seen those same signs yet. But long story short, we kept waiting for this rut. Waiting for this rut that everyone's talking about. And we hunted through the end of September, and it just seemed to it started to die off. It got worse and worse.
Well, and you guys purposely pushed your hunt back. It seemed like your main push for your 10-day or whatever.
Exactly what we did.
Because you thought it was going to be towards the end of the month.
Exactly. That's exactly what we did.
And I think, you were saying to me a couple times you went down earlier in the month, and you had elk coming in like crazy. Yeah. And you're like, this is going to be awesome here in about 10 days. We're going to get on fire, you know, and then you're like, wait a second. Maybe that was the rut.
Well, that was the hard part, because it was just these awesome experiences in the first part of September to the middle of September, and everyone kept saying, oh, just wait. You think that's good? Just wait. Yeah. And we waited, and
it didn't happen.
It didn't get better.
At least on that unit. Who knows? Maybe somebody else has some magical information about another unit.
But we did just like you said. I mean, we planned our hunt based on information. Really, we were going to focus the last 2 weeks of the hunt, and instead, looking back, I wish I would have hunted probably the first full 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks is probably or maybe 3 weeks, is what I would have done. But
well, and it seemed like that you said you went down right at the start of your 10-day hunt, and the bulls were coming in, and you had plenty of opportunities right there. And then all of a sudden I was calling, I was like, oh, how's it going? Is it good? Is it good? And you're like, I don't know. It just seems like it's so quiet. Nothing's good. I'm like, I was getting so worried for you that it already happened.
Yeah.
And when you were telling me some of the scenarios, I'm like, man, that sounds like
the rut.
It's done.
Yeah. I mean, one of the scenarios just early on in September when I called in that 5-point bull, I mean, he was fired up.
Yeah.
And he came in at 20 yards and thrashing a tree. And, being a limited entry unit, I didn't want to take
No.
a 5-point that early
Right.
on, knowing
Right.
that, that's supposed to get so much better. And so I didn't take him. I just watched him, and then he stopped raking the tree, stood 10 yards from me, just looking out in yonder,
Yeah.
and I'm just in awe watching this. But I want to say it was about mid-September when I went and sat on a wallow. A guy had given me a tip. He said, "Hey, there's some wallows up in this area." He had just harvested his bull off some water, and he said, "Go sit on that wallow, go check it out." So I went there, and I sat on it, and this was the bull that I think I've talked about previously that I called in that 6x7, and
Yep.
he was just roaring. He was raging, and I'd blown the shot. I'd hit a limb and missed him. But after that, I thought, well, it's pretty much over. Tonight's hunt's over, so I'm just going to start to pack up. Well, as soon as I start packing up, I hear a bull bugling over on this other side of this hill, and I mean hill. It's like a little hill. I probably ran up that hill within 15 seconds. I mean, it's not a big hill at all. And I get up on top of this hill, and mind you, it's getting to where it's getting a little, it's not dark, but the lighting's just not very good.
Right.
And so I was comfortable shooting 30 yards in. Anything beyond 30 yards, maybe a little iffy. But I get on top of this hill, and I'm standing there by a tree, and all of a sudden I hear all these cows mewing, and they come through some trees right behind me, 40, 50 yards behind me. A bull comes in from behind them, and they all kind of run off, and then another bull comes in from behind them, and he stops, and I tried to shoot him. I thought, well, I'm going to see if I can take this one. So I drew back, and I cow called. He stopped. I drew back, and he bolted. But then all of a sudden, I hear another bull, and he's bugling off to the right of me, kind of in front of me, and he comes up the hill, and then he's got a bunch of cows, and they're all mewing, and he's circling them, and he's not letting them go anywhere. He's trying to protect his harem.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I hear a bull right behind me off to my to the back of me, to the right, and he's tearing into a tree. So here I've got 4 bulls right there all around me. 2 are just raging. I mean, it was just exactly what I would imagine the peak of the rut looking like.
Yeah.
And the bugling just went on and on and on. And even in following days from that, I heard a lot of bugling. We saw a lot of just really ruddy activity.
And that was mid-September, right?
That was mid-September.
And then it just kind of tapered off from there, though?
It seemed to really taper off. And like I said, it's just everyone kept saying, well, no, it's still coming. But maybe they hadn't seen what I had seen.
Right.
And so everything I'd seen that was just phenomenal ruddy type activity. And so that's why we thought, well, hey, let's talk about this in an upcoming podcast. Let's talk about what are those signs of the rut. We know that there's kind of a pre-rut, there's the peak rut, and there's like a post-rut, and the cows come into estrus, and peak of the rut, but then they'll have a second estrus later on. So we're not trying to say that, hey,
this is it.
This is it.
Yeah.
Nothing else. You're not going to see anything else after the peak of the rut. We're just saying, here are the kinds of signs you should be looking for in a rut, right?
Yeah.
And see if the rut activity is going on.
And I think this is everywhere, not just in Utah. It has that same cycle. And so, I mean, it might be earlier, it might be later, depending on the weather and elevation and wherever you might live. I mean, obviously, there's going to be other environmental factors that impact this. But for the most part,
what can you expect to see, right?
Yeah.
2 years ago, it was the archery hunt was terrible. I didn't see anything. But the rifle hunt, which was the first week of October, I saw so much rutting activity going on.
Weird, huh?
Yeah, bulls fighting, and so it just kind of varies. I think the timing year to year.
The moon phase.
The moon. They talk about when the cows are going to come into estrus and all those kinds of things. But and obviously, I mean, what is the rut? I mean, the rut really is it's mating season, right?
Yeah.
And so you're looking for those types of signs that occur with that. And so we thought we would identify. We come up with 10 signs that the rut's on.
Yeah.
And one of the first ones we thought we'd talk about is bulls wallowing.
Getting all nasty, muddy.
Get all nasty and muddy. And
pissing on them.
Yeah.
It seems like they mud and pee at the same time.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Well, and there's a reason for that. I mean, because that's why they wallow. I've often wondered, do elk wallow to cool off?
Mm-hmm.
That makes kind of sense to me.
Yeah.
Are they trying to get the flies off? But no, the reason you don't really see cows wallowing. You see the bulls wallowing.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I've seen younger bulls. I've seen a spike kind of act like he's going to wallow, but mostly it's the bigger bulls that are wallowing. And the reason for that is because they are doing what you said. They are peeing all over in that wallow.
Yep.
They are spreading their scent, and then they're laying in it and getting that scent all over their bodies. And so that's really why they're wallowing.
And that's why, I mean, a lot of times when you're out there, you're like, dude, I smell elk.
Yeah. Oh, this wallow that I told you that guy gave me kind of a tip on. When I got there, it reeked. It was pungent. I mean, it was.
You're like, you could taste it.
It was bad, and that wallow was just. I mean, there was track. The mud was kind of like thrown. You could see where they laid in it and just throwing it up everywhere. Yeah. It was awesome looking, but man, was it stinky. So I'll just read something that the RMEF states on their website. It says during the rut, a bull's urine becomes saturated with testosterone, and any spring or boggy spot can become a wallow. A bull will rake the muck with his antlers, then unleash a veritable pheromone fury stream onto his mane and into the mud. Then the bull will flop around like a dog rolling on a dead fish. After his rut funk is amplified, he will many times rub his mane, chin, and pre-orbital gland on nearby trees and often belt out a bugle. What he hopes is warning to other bulls and a siren song for the ladies. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, that's kind of what's happening. And I watched it for myself when we were hunting this last year. I had it all on video. I mean, I sent you some of those videos, the bulls peeing all over himself, and they stick their heads down, and they're spraying their faces. It's nasty. It is nasty.
Nasty to think about, and then you get up there and you hold that sucker once you kill it, and you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wait a second, he's got piss all over him.
So I mean, that's what they do. And they're really, it's a couple of weeks before the cows come into estrus that you'll start seeing that wallowing type activity, and you might see some of the younger bulls start doing it sooner than maybe the bigger bulls, but usually it's the bigger bulls, and they'll rut they'll wallow not just in mud. I've seen wallows of just like bark. You've seen them just tear up grass and whatever they can kind of roll in, right, to
get that scent on them.
Yeah, so
makes sense.
Yeah.
But majority of the people think of a wallow. They think of a mud hole with water.
Yep.
And that's
most of the time. Yeah. We had a guy this last year. He was not very familiar with elk hunting, and he had drew out on the same unit we were on, and he said, I saw this bull that was gray. Why would I see a gray bull? And we're like, oh, well, he's been wallowing, and the mud's dried up. Yep. That's what you see that you think is gray. It's just dried up mud.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh. I wasn't... Yeah. I didn't know what that was. So yeah, so he wasn't sure what that was, but anyways, it's pretty cool, especially when you see a bull out there and they're just muddy and nasty, and it's pretty cool to see. Let's see. So one of the other things kind of goes along the same lines. We already talked about this, but another sign that they're really rutting is peeing on themselves, and you'll see what you can notice on the bulls is that their underbelly and their mane turns really dark, and it's that urine that's staining their hair, their elk hair. And they're doing it to get all smelly and yummy for the ladies. So
they must not drink a lot of water if it can stain their beard that color, because that just tells it's really dark.
Yeah,
you're not doing so good health-wise, but for them, it's pure health.
Yeah.
It shows
whatever it is in the urine that gets on their hair, it just causes it to stain and get all dark brown. So.
Yep.
The other thing, we talked about this on our Instagram post, was that pre-orbital gland that's right in front of their eye. Yeah. So that gland will actually open up and secrete a scent. Another scent. And that's another way that the bulls attract the cows is with that pre-orbital gland. And I noticed it big time on a bull this year when I was videoing him. He I mean, it was huge. I mean, there's a big crater right in the front of his eye, and that's what I was curious about. I started reading up a little bit more about it, but that's what it is. It's that pre-orbital gland. You'll see it more this time of year as they try to get that scent out. And so it's kind
I
of
wonder how they secrete from that.
the gland secretes it, but I think, then they'll try to rub it on things. They'll rub it on plants. Anything they can do to try to rub it and try to spread that scent. That's what they try to do. So
Interesting.
yeah, not very. I don't know. Doesn't sound real yummy either.
It's just eye gland boogies coming out or something.
Can you imagine if our
Oh, shoot. We would look hideous. I'm opening up my glands.
hey honey, check out my eye boogie.
Yummy. Oh, my gosh, you're so amazing.
It smells so good.
Ugh. I think that's why we mask our scent as males with deodorant and perfume.
Yeah, isn't it funny? Well, I get, elk, they just use their natural scents, and here we are trying to cover everything
We're
else
trying
up.
to cover out our natural man scent.
All right, so let's see, what else do we got here? Another one you and I were chatting about here earlier was, you look for a swollen neck or that swollen hump on just, past their neck. It just happens. Their neck starts to swell up. So that's another thing you can kind of look for, that the bulls are starting to get into the rut, is that swelling of the neck and the hump. And I had read a few different things about, someone has suggested that they thought it was because their antlers were heavy and that made their neck really, buff, muscular. But, I mean, those antlers are growing throughout the summer season, and their neck's not swollen until that rutting time. And I think it's pretty well understood that it's more, testosterone. It's that kind of that rutting activity, a change in their body.
Just makes them look big. It does make them look bigger and more powerful. And, I mean, that's one of the things that the cows are going to look for, is just the most dominant looking male. And if that's a bigger neck, hey, more on you, that's more kudos to you to look more manly, to have this big old cape that's covered in your piss and bulky, and you look awesome.
They need bigger hose. Maybe their hose should grow really huge. So
there you go.
Like, dang, look at
man,
that, honey.
Look at the size of his feet.
Is that a 15?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, that would be interesting if that happened. You can tell how big a bull is by their hoofs in the dirt, but
this one bull we were following, what was cool is the area we were hunting was kind of sandy, and so they really left an imprint. And there was one bull. Oh, his tracks were huge. We just knew he was a big bull, and I had seen him driving out at night. I saw him on the side of the road, and he was a big boy. And then went back there the next day and looked at his track, and it was huge.
Yeah,
nice bull. Let's see what else. One of the big things I think we all see is that raking, right? A lot of raking activity. Yep, raking a tree. I've heard that the bigger bulls like to rake some of the. If you see like a bigger rake on a tree, generally that's a bigger bull. But in general, I mean, just bulls love to rake. They like to tear into a tree. They're very aggressive about it. Even we're talking after their velvet's been removed. They rub that velvet off. But even after that, there's just a lot of that
polishing.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that one area I came into last year, pine trees that were 5-6 inches around, that was tore up.
Yeah.
There was probably 50 of the trees in this little grove that were just tore to heck. I'm like, oh my gosh, how many bulls were in here? Was this one? Is this 20? Yeah. I mean, it just seemed like it was almost like a pre-staging area, because obviously the sign in the trees was a little old. And I was just like, well, maybe they were here first part of September or August. And was this a rubbing area to get their velvet off, or vice versa? And now where are they, And so. Well,
and that's something, you talk about where are they, that was something to look for, is that if you're scouting, preseason scouting, and you see a lot of rubs, that generally tells you the elk are either in the area or they're going to come to that area. And that's what we found on this hunt. Is the elk typically stayed west in the summer, but as the rut went on, they moved east, and we confirmed that with the biologist. and further east is where you saw all the rubs. You didn't see the rubs to the west; you saw them to the east. So that's what they would do. They'd move from the west in the summer to the fall in the east, and that's where we saw the rubs. So you knew that's where they were doing most of their rutting activity, and that ended up actually being the case. So.
Well, maybe you just need to go there a little bit earlier.
Yeah, so just look for those rubs, and it'll give you a good idea. Obviously, another thing. I mean, it's the big one, right? I guess I'd say is the bugling, right? I mean, just lots of bugling going on. Glunking. You know, I don't know if everyone knows what glunking is. I'll tell you at least what kind of. Here's a description of it. It says a glunk is a sound made by a bull that you may also hear during the rut. A glunk is a muffled bass sound in single tones, one after the other in quick recession. The bull uses this vocalization to communicate with groups of cows, and it's kind of like glunk, 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 glunk. I mean, it's kind of hard to do, but that's kind of what that sound is like.
Just get your call tube over there and just hit the end of it.
Yep, you'll see callers when they're doing these call competitions. They take the end of their tube and they just smack it with their hand, right, to get that glunk sound, and that's what it sounds like. Yeah. And so it's kind of cool to hear actually when you're out in the wild. And so if you hear that sound, you know, good chance that bull is showing some rutting activity. So.
He's looking for the ladies.
Yeah. What else do we got? Oh, you know, so we talked about during the rut, you know, you'll usually have a dominant bull who's rounding up cows, and we call that a harem, and they'll have satellite bulls around the outside. I mean,
I was trying to come in and get their ladies.
Yeah, I always think of that like, you know, a satellite. You know, you got a moon or a planet or something. You got these satellites going around. Same kind of thing. I mean, you've got these satellite bulls are following around that harem, but that's something obviously to look for. And I think if you've been out in the wild, you've seen it. I mean, you'll see the bulls are very protective of their cows.
Yeah,
they'll circle them. They'll run off the other bulls.
And that's why those other satellite bulls are there. They're trying to get in and get some of the ladies off for themselves. And
peel a couple off.
Yeah.
Check me out.
You don't look as good. Look at my feet. They're hairy.
Yeah. So going along with that, another sign obviously is fighting.
Yeah.
It's just one of their activities they do. And what's interesting too, if you've seen some of those bulls just maybe more, I'll call it sparring, they make some really weird squealing noise. The elk will. It's really bizarre when you actually hear it. It's like, wee, 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 wee. It's weird.
It is weird.
But fighting's a good sign, and then broken antlers from fighting is another sign. And I think it depends on the year, on the health of the elk, the bull, you know, whether his antlers are going to break or not. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But we saw a lot of broken antlers this last year.
And Brad's brother's bull had a bunch of busted antlers.
Yeah, it had a bunch busted off. So obviously, fighting is obviously a big one that's pretty well known. Another thing that you and I were talking about before this was just licking the air. You know, you'll see a bull literally sticking, you know, his nose up in the air, and he's licking. He's licking for that scent.
Trying to female.
Yep, trying to see if the female's ready. So there's another thing. If you see a bull with his nose up in the air and he's licking, got his tongue out.
He's not just trying to get a booger out of his nose.
Yeah. Yeah, not just trying to get a drink. And then the other thing, the 10th one here is just, you know, sniffing a cow for readiness. You'll see the bulls going around, sniffing the cow's hind ends. And that's something they do all the time as well. And so
just getting that female pheromone going on.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's lots of things like those 10 items you can look for. How much does it matter? I mean, during the actual hunting, I mean, you want to hunt in the rut, right?
Yeah.
But usually you're not going to say, "Oh, is the rut on? Do I start now?" You know what I mean?
Do I wait?
Yeah, you don't think necessarily that way. But to recognize those signs when you're out in the field, you'll know whether, you know, the rut is on or not.
Yeah.
And I would say the more you see of these signs, the greater likelihood that the rut is occurring.
Yeah. And I think the big thing that we look for as hunters is obviously wallows. If it's getting mucked up, scrapes, and then the calling. You know, calling's huge.
Bugling, right? Yeah, you hear a lot of bugling. That's generally what I think we think of.
Yeah.
Oh, they're bugling. Okay, the rut's going on.
Yeah, and that's our main tool that we use to try to lure in those, either the satellite or the main bull, to get them pissed off enough is the calling.
Yeah. So, you know, going, I guess, full circle here, all these signs that we've laid out here, these are all the things that I saw often last fall that told me, hey, the rut's in full swing here.
Yeah.
And my trail cameras, I saw it on all my trail cameras. I saw it for myself. You hear it. And I really think, from my own personal opinion, from my observations, was that the rut was in full swing about mid-September in the area that we were at.
Yeah.
And I think it started to tail off a little bit towards the end of September. And it is what it is. Unfortunately, I wish we would have picked the first 2 to 3 weeks to hunt instead of the last 2, but it just it happens.
You just got to do your best guess. Yeah. That's really what it is, and get all the information that you can out there and listen. I mean, everybody talks about the moon phase. It's huge. Corey Jacobson, I mean, he swears by it. He puts out a calendar every year.
Yeah.
About moon phase, and it, obviously there is some influx from that, or whatever you want to call it, but there's other things too that you just need to be worried about, not just the moon phase. It's a whole bunch of other factors that play into when you should go hunt. I mean, it might help to kind of narrow down your hunt window if you only have a specific time that you can go. But honestly, I mean, if you can only go on a weekend, then go out and see what's happening and do your best. That's all you can do. My
experience has been if you're kind of in that rutting time frame, if you're in that mid-September time frame and you're not hearing anything, you're not seeing anything, just I don't know, it's just not looking good, my recommendation is move areas. Go look, because my suspicion is they're somewhere else and they're bugling there and they're doing their thing there. It's just you're not in the right spot at the moment.
Right.
And so that's been my experiences. I'm not going to hang out in one spot. If I'm not seeing it, I'm gonna move and try to find them. So
smart.
Anyways, how's my thoughts on it?
I think they were good.
What did you think of our goose hunt?
That was fun. Lance and I try to goose hunt every year, and it's just, when we get one, it's pretty dang fun.
So we hadn't hunted all year. So in Utah, it goes from about the 3rd or 5th of October, and it goes to about the first Sunday in February. And they do a break in there too. But anyways, we hadn't done any hunting, and just because it looked like it was going to be slow in the area we were going to go. And I happened to see some decoys for sale online. The guy was selling 6 dozen full body decoys, and I was like, maybe. And I told you about it, and the guy wanted like $1,000, and then I got on there again, and he had dropped the price quite a bit, and I was like, maybe I'll make him an offer. So I made him an offer. He took it, and so I went and picked him up, and then you and I hunted for like the last 2 weeks, and we finally got a group to come in, and we were so stoked when we took 2 of them buggers out of the air.
Goose meat, if you've never had goose, it is fantastic.
That is good, huh?
It tastes so good.
Yeah, I cooked mine up the other day, and it was awesome.
I don't know.
It was tender. What surprised me is how tender it was.
Yeah, they're just, the first time you cut into one, you're like, dude, I'm going to eat this. And you're like, ugh, because it's just such a dark meat.
It's surprising. The first time I ever goose hunted and brought home a goose, I'm getting ready to see white meat.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. And I open it up, and I'm like, dark? What is this?
Should I eat this? Is this liver on the breast?
Yeah, it's kind of a reddish brown meat, dark meat. And then you don't have to cook it like chicken. It isn't like you have to cook it with, you kind of cook it like steak, right? A little bit rare in the middle. And man, this last one I had was just so tender and good. And
well, then you cooked it on your buddy heater too, so that helped.
Oh, that's true. I did. So one of the things Dave and I bought, we got these little griddles that you actually attach to your buddy heaters, and we have this in a little tent. Probably most people don't hunt out of a little blind, but we've got these blinds that we can tuck into the trees, and they're really well hidden.
Yeah.
So we're sitting in there with we each got our own heaters and our own blinds, and we got these little griddles on there, and I was cooking up goose while I was goose hunting. It was pretty awesome.
Sent me a video. It's like, whoa, look what I'm eating. Yeah, it's that little tray thing worked pretty good.
Yeah, it gets a little hot. It's hot to the back, and not as much out front, but it works good. It gets pretty. When I took it off and I put it on that wood,
it was like branding it.
Yeah, I was branding my wood. Started smoking.
You almost lit the wood floor on fire.
So yeah, we're pretty big nerds when we posted that on Instagram about us getting all excited about finally getting some geese.
It was only 2 geese. You know, some people might look at it and they, that was just 2.
Yeah.
You guys suck. Well, invite us to come hunting with you then, because we probably do suck when it comes to goose hunting.
Well, we don't put the effort in to go out somewhere like out in the bottoms, you know, and we're not going around town trying to see if we can hunt other people's property. We know that the geese fly over this area
Every day.
It's my family farm. And so we know they fly over it. It's easy access for it, so we can just leave our stuff up. And so we just set our stuff up there, and we just try to lure one of them groups out of the sky. They always are heading to what we call the sanctuary, and they just want to go there. It's every day. They go to the same spot, and people are probably thinking, well, to go hunt the sanctuary. Well, we can. It's in an area where they won't let you hunt.
It's surrounded by homes.
Yeah, and so we just sit in that spot and try to lure some down, and occasionally we do, and
when we do,
and we act like idiots when we
act like little 2-year little excited kids from 5th grade or something like that.
Yeah. So, anyways, short podcast. We hope everyone enjoyed it. Just wanted to kind of give you an idea of some of the things to look for, for the peak of the rut, and kind of what rutty activity to look for. And the rut is fun. That's for dang sure. I especially had a blast this last year.
Gets you excited for sure.
Yeah, being able to hunt more in that rut time frame, peak of the rut time frame was a lot of fun. You know, like I said, Utah is mainly a mid-August to mid-September. The other states, most of them are all of September, and they're fortunate to be able to do that because they can be in the rut most of the time, right in the peak of it. And so
that's
cool.
for the archery season.
Archery season, yeah.
Speaking of archery, we encourage you guys to get out and do some shooting this winter. Keep up on your skills so when you have that chance.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, I think it's like anything. I was talking to my son Jared the other day, and I'm like, I need to start practicing my bugling like the girls do the piano. I was like, do you think Mom will get mad if I sit up here in the piano room and just start ripping off bugles and cow calls in the middle of the front room? And Jared's like, you might want to go downstairs in your little room and close the door. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's something I think we as hunters forget is, the winter hits, it's time to get indoors and kind of just shut down. And maybe it's a time to perfect something or try to do something a little better. And
you do it when you're driving. And
you don't have to have the tube there.
The other day, I mean, after you and I had goose hunted and we saw where those geese went, we went and we drove up, see where they're at, and I could hear them. And I was listening intently to listen to those sounds they were making. So when I got in my car and was driving back home, man, I was calling, the whole way home, just practicing those sounds, just to try to tune up. And you want to get to the point, I think, when you're practicing calling. We're talking elk now. When you're talking, you want to get it to where it's kind of like second nature.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to think about it a lot, and that's what happens when you're first starting out. You're like, oh, am I going to mess it up, or am I going to do this or that?
Yeah.
You want to practice enough so when you're actually out in the field, it just becomes second nature, and you just do it.
Well, my problem is like the first call of the day, whether it's a cow call or whatever, I'm always like, what's this going to sound like? Is it going to come out as a squeak, or is it going to actually sound something right? And you're like, am I going to scare something away? Because that's what goes through my head, just because I'm not confident enough in my calling yet.
Yeah. That
I'm like, what is going to come out of this sound that I'm going to make? Is it going to be horrible? And
well, Lydia talked about that in our last podcast, that you just make a terrible sound and they still bugle
it doesn't
back.
matter. Yeah.
I had one several years ago. This bull was coming, he was coming, and I'm bugling, cow calling, he's coming, he's bugling, and my heart was racing. I was almost tired of calling. And anyways, I went to bugle, and it sounded horrible. It just came out really messed up, but he fired right back again. And I just don't think it matters that much.
Yeah.
I think we're more critical of ourselves than we need to be. It's not a calling contest when you're out when you're out there in the field, and so let it rip. Just
let her rip, Tater Chip.
I was that way. My daughter's that way still now. I mean, you go out and she's hesitant to bugle because she's afraid she's going to sound bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, just let it rip.
Don't matter.
So
cool beans.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. If you would like to be on our podcast, you can send us an email. Send us an email at info@elkjunkie.com. The other way you can reach out to us, just send us a direct message on Instagram. We'd love to share any elk stories you have with us. So just reach out to us. We've had quite a few podcasts that last year with some friends or just people we know, acquaintances that just had some great experiences elk hunting, and they really had a blast just coming on the show and sharing it. So don't be afraid to reach out to us if you got a story you'd like to share. We'd love to have you on and get those stories out. And we've talked about this many a times that there's a lot of experts out there in the industry, but there are so many hunters out there that aren't out in social media, that aren't well known, but they are experts. They are really good hunters. They got a lot of things to share. Great advice. So we'd love to have you on.
Yep.
All right, let's wrap this one up. See ya.